Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education meeting for February 8th, 2011. May I have a roll call, please?
Here. Here.
Here.
Mr. Scribner?
Here.
Mr. Berkner?
Here.
Mr. Carey?
Here.
Mrs. Golan? Here. Thank you. Under the President's report, as many of you know, we had hoped to present tonight the findings of the results from the superintendent search, from the surveys and the focus meetings that took place over the last 3 months. Unfortunately, there was one of our consultants, there was a death in the family, and so we are putting off that report. It will be presented at the end of the month at the District 67 Board of Education meeting, and then presented here at the high school Board of Education, both in March. Those reports will both be in March at both District 115 and 67. And along those lines, on behalf of the board, we would like to convey our condolences and sympathies to the family of Dr. Clough, who did lose his sister, and that's why we don't have the results this evening. So our thoughts are with them. Next month, we're hoping to have be ready for our goal-setting workshop, possibly preceding the regular board meeting. And other than that, that's all on the President's report. So I will turn it over to Dr. Griffith for the superintendent report.
All right, Madam President, members of the board, and members of the audience, thank you for being here tonight. Let's go to Principal Jay Hoffman for a report from Lake Forest High School.
Well, since the last time we met, we did have finals, and those went really well. And we also survived Snowmageddon, so that went well too. And I'd like to thank our custodial staff, especially our outside guys, for really getting the school ready for school. With all the snow removal and all that they had to do on both campuses, they really did a great job, so I'd like to thank them. And without further ado, here's Caroline.
Last Friday, February 4th, Student Council had our annual winter dance, and we went with the theme of 90s. The money from this we are using to help support our first ever ELS dance, which will include our school as well as programs in the surrounding schools. The dance is set for Saturday, February 26th, which is 2 days after the ELS basketball game, which takes place during 4th, 5th, and 6th period lunches. For this, Student Council is donating an iPad to raffle off, and to raise money for this, we are selling raffle tickets for $1 each for a Chipotle lunch for a person and 4 friends during each lunch period. And the lunch will be on February 23rd, and there will be one winner in each lunch period. Seniors are beginning to brainstorm ideas for class gifts. The juniors had the food tasting for prom at the end of January. The freshmen are beginning to organize a penny war in between the freshman English classes, and the sophomores are continuing to work at the Boys and Girls Club in Waukegan.
Thank you, Dr. G.
All right, well, thank you, Carolyn. And then Jay also, thank you so much. Well, very briefly, this past Saturday, there was a legal workshop that was held for school board members and superintendents. It was hosted by one of the law firms that we work with, and it was down at McDonald's University. It was very well attended, large number of people there, and I'd like to thank Todd Bergner and John Scribner for both attending on behalf of the high school board. We also had a couple of board members there from District 67. The topics ranged from student discipline issues to contract negotiations on various topics, just a potpourri of opportunities to attend different sessions. And it was really quite effective, and again, thank you, gentlemen, for attending. Just real quickly, I'd like to ask Julie to come to the podium with me for a moment and just briefly update the board on the study that we're doing with respect to, or the cost structure for participating with NSSED, which is the special education co-op that Lake Forest High School participates in with 17 other school districts in the North Shore area. We've been doing a background analysis of what the costs are relative to the services we receive. That cost study has been completed. It does appear that it's quite expensive, beyond what, actually far beyond what it would cost for us to offer comparable services. It's not very many students involved, but the savings still could be significant. So we hosted here in the boardroom a meeting for any parent from the NSSCD community who would be interested in hearing a little bit of our update. So I'd like Dr. Cooley to say a few words about the meeting that we had. There were about 45 parents here. And then also some of the going forward activity that we have in mind to make a final determination about our participation in the co-op going into the year starting 2012-13. Julie?
Sure. Good evening. Yes, on January 13th is the night that Dr. Griffith is referring to. We really filled this room pretty nicely. And what we did was we gave the families that came some information about some of our current programs that we do within district that were formerly supported by NSSCD. District 67 had a viewpoint on that, and then the high school came in and talked about their new program links and some of the other programming that they're doing as well. Following that, we gave some information about the financial impact that Dr. Griffith referred to, that we could potentially provide a high-quality program with a significant cost savings to our community. We ended up, I know that Marilyn Harlow gave some great information from her perspective on the NSSCD board. Dr. Griffith as well gave his viewpoint and support for our action plan. And then we finished the evening just talking about some of the steps on the action plan. We also announced that we'd be starting a parent advisory, and we've put that information out to the community. We did that toward the end of January and asked them to commit. And we believe we have representatives from our 3 districts to serve on the advisory, and we're going to have our first meeting on February 16th, so next week. We did post our action plan on the web, so we've got that up for parents to see, and we continue to make progress in looking at our students and how they're going to age into different programs and how we can prepare for those things. We're starting to do site visits and starting to do some best practice research. We have a program evaluation design in mind, which we intend to implement in March and April, so we continue to make good progress. Dr. Griffith, I don't know if you want to refer to the meeting that we have coming up to share some of our financial information with some of the other NSSCD members. So we're continuing on in a quite thorough fashion, I think, with the action plan.
One little, so the savings to our 2 districts together, $200,000 a year annual savings to Lake Forest High School, $300,000 roughly to District 67, $500,000 on our 5-year planning process. That's $2.5 million. So it's really very significant to us. One good piece of information that NSSCD has put out a letter to all of the superintendents describing their efforts to also look at their budgets and to evaluate their own finances with respect to the programs. And I'm pleased to report that from the superintendent of the NSSCD district that preliminary work has been provided to show that there will be no additional or transferred costs to any of the other member districts should the 3 school districts depart from the NSSCD. So if there's no adverse effects on any of the other districts, that's actually good news. And yet the savings would be significant to the 3 of us. So that's it's hard to understand that, but I would report that as a win-win. If it's okay to NSSCD and the savings to us too.
This is by their estimates, Aaron?
This is reading from their letter. Yeah, by their own estimates. We're going to be having a meeting next week about this and just to go over this to make sure that this is making sense to everybody too. Talking about the superintendents will be meeting about this. So, Marilyn, did you want to add anything?
Well, it is an interesting letter. And I think, again, it's very important for us to think about the overall way we fund NSSCD. And the reason why, or the most significant reason why it makes so much sense for us to be looking at this is because we, off the top of our federal IDEA money that comes in, NSSED gets 40% of it off the top and applies that into general operating expenses there. And because we're a low-use district at NSSED, that contribution that we make really does fund higher-use districts. So I'm not exactly sure how this letter works, given that that is, in fact, true. I'm on the Finance Committee, and I'll be interested to see the study that is behind this letter. But in any case, I still hold hope that we may not need to totally leave NSSED if they restructure the way they do business. And the Finance Committee is looking at that. And one of the main things they're looking at is the way billing occurs. And if we actually move to a structure at NSSED where they actually only charge you the actual cost of the services that you buy from them, then we could stay in NSSED still as a safety net because we would only be using those services we wanted to use. We wouldn't be paying this high premium of IDEA funding and also the administrative costs they charge us above and beyond the amount of money we pay for the actual services we receive. So I think what we're doing is the right thing, because if they don't change their cost structure, then it clearly makes sense to walk away. If they do change their cost structure and we don't have to walk away, then we can have our cake and eat it too, essentially, because the more that we move here, the stronger our program becomes. It's a very clear incentive in special education to mainstream kids as much as you can and to educate them in your own school as much as you can. So if we're able to do high-quality programming in our own school, that's an objective of special education across the board. That's a good thing. So the more of that we do, the lower our costs at NSSED will be if we can solve this billing issue that is really to our detriment there.
Thank you, thank you, Marilyn. Also, Julie, thank you so much. So board members, we'll keep you apprised as we go along. I want to reassure everyone, though, that we're not talking about a diminishment of service. We're talking about a shifting of where the service could occur. For example, we have a CEDAL school, a competitor co-op right here in this building with as many as 100 students. You know, it's an elementary program, grades 1 through 8, but we're able to establish relationships with other high-quality service providers also. So we have no doubt whatsoever, including private and public providers, that we actually would be expanding our range of options that we would have. So I also anticipate being able to have certainly some kind of relationship with NSSED, but not at the cost of $2.5 million in excess cost to us over a 5-year period. Okay, and if board members, any questions about that? Okay, the Education Committee will continue to evaluate the educational side of this. The Finance Committee will be looking at the financial side of it, and the Operations Committee any operational effects, because if we are bringing students back, and oh, by the way, a total of approximately 30 students, kindergarten through 12th grade is who we're talking about. Total of about 30 students, K-12. So should there be any other programming adjustments that affect our operational side, Dick will be bringing that to the Operations Committee for review, and similarly back to the Education Committee.
Did that number include just District 67 and 115, or does that include 65 as well, of 30 students?
With 65, it's 32 students, or 34 students, 34. Still a very small number. Okay, that concludes the superintendent's report.
I just have one additional comment, too, when we're looking at this. If we recover the savings from NSSED, even if we do move out of the co-op because they don't adjust the way that they do business, the savings are substantial enough. There are many other vendors of special education service that have are very strong alternatives for us to our placements at NSSED. So because this would free up that money, we could make those alternative placements. I have a list of probably 20 other providers that NSSED has identified that are options for us.
But that's already-
So we're not limiting our options too much if we move away from NSS.
Marilyn, and that, we've already calibrated that in.
Right.
This is, after doing that, we still have the $500,000 annual save, $200,000 to the high school. So that's actually already factored in.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Dr. Cooley? Moving on, we have public participation. Is there anyone in the audience at this time who would like to speak to the board on a topic that is not included in tonight's agenda? Okay, not seeing anyone. We will move on to reports and discussions. In addition to having a snow day or two this month, something else happened, and we don't have reports. We must live right. So for that, we're going to move on to F, which is Board Committee Reports, and we'll begin with Marilyn Harlow and the Board Education Committee.
Unfortunately, our Education Committee meeting was called off for snow that was scheduled for earlier in the month. We do have 2 Education Committee meetings scheduled in the next couple weeks to make up for that one and also for one that was already scheduled. So we're meeting on Wednesday, the 16th at 1:30 at East Campus, and Tuesday, the 22nd at 10:30 at East Campus. The meeting on the 16th is basically preparation for our goal-setting meeting on the 22nd.
Thank you, Marilyn. Board Operations Committee, Dick Block.
The Operations Committee has not met since our last meeting. We had a meeting scheduled for this coming February 17th, which now appears not doable due to staff conflicts. So we're trying to reschedule for the morning of the 16th at 8 a.m., although that's tentative at this juncture.
All right, thank you, Dick. Board Finance Committee, Jim Carey.
The Finance Committee did not meet, but there have been several conversations since our last meeting. I mentioned at the previous meeting that we would be learning what our CPI factor would be to set the budget limit for our fiscal 2013 budget. That was announced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics mid-January, and it was 1.5%, which basically tells us what our growth in revenue will be for 2013. The other thing that we've discussed a lot has been where we stand on the current year relative to our expenses. And Alan, I guess I would ask you to talk a little bit about our current year budget and what our current projection is for fiscal 2011.
Every January, we do a mid-year budget assessment, kind of what's happened to date, what revenues have come in, what's been spent out, and then almost line by line go through it and project on both sides of the ledger what's going to happen for the rest of the year. On the revenue side, we're going to come up, our projection right now is about $100,000 short. So, a lot of that's in property taxes, some of that's in O&M, based on some alternative revenue that has not yet materialized. But on the expense side, that'll be offset because we project right now that benefits and salaries, our 2 largest expenses in ed and the O&M fund, will come in under budget by about $100,000. So we're kind of holding our own in those areas and everywhere else in the budget with one exception, and that has to do in the special ed area. We're projecting that we're going to spend about $700,000 more in special ed than what we have budgeted. A little less than half of that is due to residential placement tuitions that we incur, which are very, very high expense cost. And as we were talking earlier today, going through the bills and claims, I mean, those can run $15,000 a month for one student. And we've had a couple of students move in. So while it's possible down the road a student could move out, which would save us a lot of money, it's also possible another student could move in. So we have to take the info that we have at the time. But we factor that all in, and that's part of our plan, you know, taking that all into account. And then going forward, we've already factored that into our 5-year projection and what we're going to need to do to address and deal with that.
And our deficit projected deficit for the current year will be?
Well, when we adopted the budget I'm pulling this off the top of my head, I think it was around $870,000, close to 900. And so you add that 700 back in, but there's a little bit of offset in there. But right now, we're projecting about a $1.5 million disparity between expenses and revenues. And as we've talked at the budget adoption and at the tax levy hearing, it's not just property taxes, the 1/10 of 1%. We're down significantly in interest earnings. A couple of years ago, we earned $1 million. We're on track to earn $91,000 this year. The state is 3/4 of a year behind in payments. Due to the economy, there are really impact fees have gone from about $250,000 a year down to about $10,000. Corporate personal property tax was down as well. So we're seeing it on multiple levels. And it's just that the costs that we're locked into versus that.
Excuse me, Alan, where would that leave our fund balance?
We'll be down to about 1.6 million, which is, we have a practice or a goal of operating at about 10% of our operating funds, so we'd want to be up around 4.5 million right now. So we have dipped into reserves quite a bit in the last 3 years.
So we don't often have somebody sitting in the audience. It's kind of nice. I think the message here is that we've got a significant challenge for the current year and significant challenges for the next several as we look to restore our reserve levels back to what our target was, which is 10%. And that's not going to be easy to do given the fact that our primary revenue source is property taxes, and that's capped based on CPI, and we already know what that number is for the next 2 years. So an awful lot of good work has been done over the last few years anticipating these days. They've been worse than we probably thought, but in cutting back and fine-tuning the programs and cutting administrative salaries and positions, et cetera. And also trying to generate alternative revenues through different activities here, the cell tower leases, et cetera. But notwithstanding all that hard work, we are where we are, which is about 1/3 of our target in terms of reserves that will be on hand for the next year.
Yeah, the difficulty when we do the assessment and you look at where you are in the mid-year, you have to put into context where you spend your money. And so most of it's locked into salaries and benefits. And then, so that's 85 cents of every dollar. And then when you go beyond that, and you look at special ed tuition, and you look at things like postage and copier leases, and that when you get down to it, you're down to about 4 or 5 cents of every dollar that's really discretionary in a given year. We're halfway through the year. So we will go in and try and cut back between now and the end of the year and do some cost avoidance where we can. But it gets difficult on a year-to-year basis. But as I've said, we factor that in, and that's obviously influencing as we go forward what we need to do staffing-wise and expenditure-wise.
Okay, thank you. The next Finance Committee meeting is set for February 22nd, I believe, at 7 a.m. In one of the conference rooms out here. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jim. There are no liaison reports this evening, so I'll move on to the action items. The first is the approval of the IASB board policy revisions. First reading.
Yeah, yeah, I think if you could help. Board members, we do have a policy committee. 3 board members serve on the policy committee, and we received our fall updates of current policy. Most of it's very minor alignment with legislative changes. They've been reviewed by the members of the board representing the policy committee. This is for first reading. They don't produce the actual full policy in writing until we get past this first reading stage. The summary of each change is in your packet. The check mark on the boxes that you would have seen are those policies that the board committee is recommending that we move forward for, those changes, I should say. And it's a potpourri of changes, again, mostly minor and alignment-oriented. Exhibits and footnote changes are not being recommended from the policy committee, just rather the actual changes themselves that were mostly legal alignment in nature. And there was a release for August and for October. Interestingly enough, they actually don't come out in those months. It's very random when we do receive them, but you can approve this tonight as presented for first reading, or you could approve this also for second reading, waive this first reading, and just go to passage, and then we would have these policies brought to updating your version of it on the electronic platform that we have. It also would be then updated on our website for all of our community to see, should anyone want to see any of the changes in the policies also.
Just to go through some of the notes, if it's crossed out, we didn't need to do it, or we chose not to do it. In the first batch, A means accept, and in the second batch, a check mark means accept, because we did this over several meetings. The bold check marks, it came that way, because by law, we have to do that. There's a couple on hold still, because we're waiting for discussion. For example, 6:320 is on hold for Education Committee discussion. Those that are on reserve, we chose not to include them in the policy manual when we had our workshop. They've thrown them back in. If you want to discuss them at some point, have the policy committee discuss them at some point and include them, we can. But right now, it's just the ones with the check marks or the A's. And we are happy to give you the full summary discussion, but if not, then you can take our word for it that we did pour over this for hours and hours, and I want to thank Dick Block and Marilyn Harlow for their help.
Just a note on recommend that you approve footnotes. So most of the ones that we have kind of marked through because they're footnotes, that doesn't mean the staff won't be working with the footnotes, but they don't show up in the policy manual. So that's informational for us and for you.
All right, what I would need,
Could I just ask one question? Harry, looking through them, I think I probably know the answer, but were there any changes that require any substantial changes in administrative procedures?
Yes, but more in sort of a minor way. For example, the board would be adopting high school credit for proficiency. This is a new state law that does allow for a testing, to do test proficiency for high school credit. And there are some unusual circumstances where a student is in a situation where that could be helpful. So there's a new online from the state of Illinois proficiency testing. Jay, do you want to comment on that one? That would be where we sit down with our counseling department and we would meet with our department chairs and just talk about what that proficiency would mean.
A lot of them is the consumer ed requirement is a proficiency. Health could possibly be a proficiency. So there are something depending on what students' needs are.
I would also, and probably the biggest change in here, is the adoption of the new policy to conform with the Illinois requirement for food allergy management programs. And I really want to hesitate on that one for a second, because now every school district in the state of Illinois for the first time is required to have a food allergy management program. And the reason why I mention that is because there is a parent in the Lake Forest community who was very affected, whose children were very affected by food allergies some 10 years ago, and helped District 67 and then Lake Forest High School develop a food allergy management program that was state-of-the-art for the state of Illinois. this particular parent has been up in front of the legislature, their committees, giving testimony, including and in Washington, D.C., on the importance of having food management, allergy management program. The state of Illinois has literally adopted the Lake Forest Plan. So it's new to almost every school district in the state of Illinois, interestingly enough, except us. So I would say not a big change to us administratively, but it will be a big change to many other school districts. And so I just have to give credit to Denise Bunning and her husband. They do have a family foundation. They've been very devoted to this, and I have told Denise recently that I can think of no single parent who has actually had more influence on the legal standing on any particular topic in the state of Illinois than what Denise has been able to accomplish on behalf of helping children who have severe food allergies.
Thank you, Dr. Griffith, and I would like to thank the Bunning family as well. Also you and your administrative staff, because so many times when we read this, we find out that what's being prescribed by the state is already a practice here, and that's because of the staff that we have, so thank you. What I'm going to need then is that for someone to move that we waive one of the readings, and then someone else to move that we approve the revisions as presented.
I move that we waive the first reading of the IASB board policy revision.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Second motion,
Now, this is to move to approve.
to approve the revisions as presented.
Okay, I will move that we approve the policy manual revisions as presented. And as I say that, in terms of what's here on our computers, this is not part of the motion, but some of them were included under the draft motion, and then there were two other Policy 1 and Policy 2 packets, so that when I say as presented, I mean all the packets that you got in your board packet.
So that's all of the policy revisions that were presented in the board packet. Is there a second?
Second.
Is this roll call? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we're ready for our next policy meeting, folks.
Well, I also would like to thank Sharon, Dick, and Marilyn, board members. It was a lot of time that went into this, several lengthy meetings. So the administrative staff also did a lot of background work for the committee too. So board members, thank you for that.
Okay, next we have the approval of the Human Resources Report. And I'll turn that over to Dr. Cyrus.
Well, good evening, board members, Dr. Griffith. Thank you. Pretty brief report tonight. With most noteworthy item is one of our long-term English teachers, Becky Mueller, has put in her letter of retirement. It's been just a pleasure working with her the last few years. She's been very active in all the staff development that we've been doing and has been a real leader in helping with reading kind of across our whole curriculum, so that'll be a loss. Of course, we have 3 full years of her collaboration ahead of us, but she's the last retiree under this current contract to go out, so this is sort of a milestone. This will be the first year that of the crop of retirees that put in almost 4 years ago to retire, which leads us to recruiting. So this year we're actually going to be hiring some folks, so I feel like I'll be earning my money toward the end of the year here. But we'll be looking for probably 1 or 2 physics teachers this year, and a health, PE, and kind of outdoor ed person, so that's going to be interesting. We staffed a full contingent at the NWPA job fair 2 Saturdays ago, and I just want to point out 14 of our teachers came along to help us recruit, and that's really a marvelous contribution on their behalf. Of course, all the administrators were there, Jay and myself, and either directly interviewing or just kind of making sure that people had breaks and everything. It's quite a extravaganza. We had about 1,700 candidates at the fair. But I just want to especially point out 4 teachers. We had 3 that have been there for their 4th year, Chuck Spagnoli, John Maher, and Brad Naughton, and I really appreciate their loyalty and a willingness to give up a whole Saturday, and it's a grueling day to come. Carolyn Kahns came, this is I think her 2nd or 3rd year, but last year she was with child, so I was especially glad that it wasn't too awful for her that she came back again this year. So it was great, and I just was really pleased and what a as I was there, thinking like, what a really nice team and what a great group to represent us there in that kind of competition for the best candidates. So thank you very much.
Mike, wait a minute. Two things, board members. First of all, this job fair that Mike's talking about, where there was 1,700 candidates for just a few openings for us, and 14 of our staff were there for. This fair was, Lake Forest High School was not able to participate in this fair for the 20-plus years of its existence. It's the best fair in the state of Illinois. We were not able to participate in that until Dr. Cyrus became our HR assistant superintendent for both school districts. So it really has been a milestone for our district to have Mike bring to us, which leads me to my second comment. And Mike, if you don't mind, I'd like you to say a little bit about the resignation that the board has before it also.
Well, I'm also always embarrassed to bring attention to myself, which is after 4 years at this microphone. I'm sadly, or with the kind of bittersweet feelings, I have submitted my resignation. I have an opportunity to go live and work overseas, and I'll be kind of following Jay. I'm going to be a high school principal at an international school. It's interesting. It's a Mandarin immersion school. The kids learn from kindergarten on up, and so for 2 years I'll be in charge of the high school. I'll also be the assistant headmaster of the school. In my third year, I'll be the headmaster all K through 12. So the school's in Bangkok, Thailand is where I'll be. So I'm excited, but I sure hate to leave Lake Forest because it's been a great experience here, and I really loved it.
And you will be a great loss to us. The work that you've done to improve our HR operation has been spectacular. Staff development is at a level that it hasn't been in all the years I've been associated with the high school. Recruitment has a depth and a breadth that we've never had, to my knowledge. The job you've done has been extraordinary, and we are very sorry to see you go.
Well, thank you.
It's a small world these days, Mike. We can Skype.
That's right. Anytime you need anything, the little bit of institutional knowledge I'll bring with me, you'll always have access to.
Well, as I said earlier, you've set up quite a system for us, and your shoes will be hard to fill, but I know that you're leaving the district in good hands and with a lot of new knowledge and workable knowledge, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, is there a motion to approve the Human Resources Report?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda, which includes the approval of financial report and schedule of checks written, approval of minutes from a regular meeting of January 11th, 2011, minutes of an executive session January 11th, 2011, minutes of an executive session January 13th, 2011, minutes of an executive session January 26th, 2011, and the destruction of audio recordings from April 14th, 2009. Is there any item that a board member would like removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mrs. Harlow?
Aye.
Mr. Bergner?
Aye.
Mr. Block?
Aye.
Mr. Scribner?
Aye.
Mrs. Golan?
Aye. Motion carries. There were no FOIA requests, and I'd like to ask the board members if there's any items they'd like to see on future agendas. Okay, hearing none, the announcements are Friday, February 18th is an Institute Day, and there will be no school. Monday, February 21st is President's Day, no school. Tuesday, March 8th will be our next Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock p.m. here at West Campus Boardroom. And board members, you'll be hearing from Dr. Griffith or me about our goals workshop. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just heard, oh my goodness, from the audience. Meeting is adjourned.